On Svegde. Svegde inherited the kingdom after his father. He made a vow to search for Godheim and Odin the Old. He traveled with 12 men all around the world. He reached Tyrkland and Svishud the Great and met many of his relatives and made friends, and was there for 5 winters. He then returned to Svishud and stayed home for a while. He had taken a wife called Vana while in Vanaheim. Their son was Vanlande. Svegde left again to find Godheim, and to the east in Svishud there is a large town called Stein. There lies a rock as big as a house. In the evening, after sundown, when Svegde left the drinking for his sleeping house, he had a look at the rock and noticed a dwarf sitting under it. Svegde and his men were very drunk and ran over to the rock. The dwarf stood in the door and beckoned Svegde, asked him to come inside if he wished to find Odin. Svegde ran into the rock, but the rock closed abruptly after him, and Svegde never came out again. So says Tjodolf from Kvine. The day shy Durnis kin, hall guardian, toppled Svegde, when he and Stone, the massive one, Dulsa's kin, after the dwarf ran, and the shining hall of Sökkmimir, Jotun built, swallowed the prince. On Vanlande, Svegde's son was called Vanlande. He inherited the kingdom and ruled over the Uppsala riches. He was a great warrior, and he traveled far and wide. He overwintered in Finland with Snjö the Old, and married there his daughter Drifa. When spring came, he went away, but Drifa stayed. He promised to return within 3 winters, but he didn't return in 10 winters. Then Drifa sent for Huld, Seidwife, and sent Visbur, her son, to Svishud with Vanlande. Drifa paid Huld, Seidwife, so she would conjure Vanlande back to Finland, or else kill him. When she started conjuring, Vanlande was at Uppsala. An urge rose in him to travel to Finland, but his friends and advisors forbade him and said that his wanderlust had to come from the sorcering Finn woman. He then became sleepy and went to bed. But just as he fell asleep, he cried out and said that the Mara was trampling him. His men rushed to and wanted to help him, but when they held his head, she trampled his legs so they almost broke. Then they reached for his legs. She then crushed his head so he died. The Sviar took his body and he was burned at the place called Skuta. His menhir was placed there. So says Tjodolf. To visit Vili's brother, bewitched by the goblin Vanlande came. When the trollkind started stamping, Grimhildir killed the great warrior. And then he burned on Skutu's beach the generous one, whom Mara strangled. Visbur's death. Visbur took inheritance after his father Vanlande. He married the daughter of Aud the Rich and gave her 3 large estates and a golden necklace as dowry. They had 2 sons, Gisle and Ondur. Visbur left her and took another wife, while she left for her father with her sons. Visbur had a son called Dumalde. His stepmother had Seidre done to grant him misfortune. But when Visbur's sons were 12 and 13 winters old, they went to meet him and claimed their mother's dowry, but he wouldn't give it. They then proclaimed that the golden band would become the death of the greatest man of his kin, and they left and went home. They then started seiding again, and charged the seid thus that they would be able to kill their father. Then Hulder the Völv told them that she would seid accordingly, and in addition that kinsfolk would always keep killing each other among the Ynglinga kin. They agreed on this. After that, they gathered their forces and snuck up on Visbur during the night and burned him inside. So says Tjodolfr. And Visbur's burden of will by the ocean brother was swallowed whole. When the wicked thief of the forest incited the throne guardians against their father, and the all-king in the hearth keel, the ember dogs bellowing bit. So some notes on the terms and translations and such. Stein is a rock, stone, so more or less the same word. I just kept it as it is. And Durin's kin, these are dwarves living underground. So Durin's forefather and ancestor of a lineage of dwarves, and they live underground and in mountains and hills and such. And Sökkmimir. Sökkmimir is a Jotun, he's a giant. They also live in the mountains and underground. Yeah. Mara is a female demon that haunts people, and often during the night. So like in Norwegian and Danish, if you have a nightmare, which probably is the same root, mare, nightmare, not Mara. In Norwegian and Danish you say mareritt, that you ride with a Mara during the night when you have a nightmare. In Swedish you have a mardröm, dream of the Mara. Skuta, just mentioning it, I don't know where it is. There's a place, of course this is going on in the Uppsala area, and there is a place not far from Uppsala called Skutskär, and perhaps this is a reminiscent of Skuta, I don't know. Vili's brother, this is pointing to that he dies, so he visits. Vili's brother is Odin. Earlier in Ynglinga Saga they're mentioned Ve and Vilje, like these mythological legendary brothers. In some other sagas Odin has other kin as well, but here in Ynglinga Saga it's Ve and Vilje mentioned. So when you visit Vilje's brother, you visit Odin in Valhall, and you have died. Ember dogs, this is a kenning for fire, like fire bursting out in the poem Ember Dogs. And hearth keel, I've translated quite literally, because many times it's translated hearth boat, but kjol, which is mentioned in the sagas, Arnkjol or Arnekjol. Arne is hearth and kjol is more properly translated to keel, kjøl in Norwegian. So it's not the whole boat, but the underside of the boat. Probably because a longhouse, the hearth keel points to a longhouse, which I forgot to mention, and a longhouse with a thatched roofing would look like similar to a keel. I mean, also in with other roofings it would look similar, or the underside of a boat. Blot, I'm keeping as it is because it's such a essential word, and it, like I mentioned before, it means sacrifice. And burden of the will, this kenning is a kenning for the corporal body. So the corporal body is a weight on your will. Whatever you want to do, the corporal body weighs you down. So burden of the will is a kenning for corporal body. So throne guardians. This is a kenning for where they guard the throne, they lay claim to the throne. If you do that as a younger kin of a king, it's a rightful claim. So they're claiming their inheritance. They're putting a rightful claim to whatever part of the realm they would inherit. So that's the kenning for the throne guardians. So that's about it, and yeah, see you next time.